Hola a todos, bienvenidos a Enlightened World Network, a Angelspeakers, interpretado en español. Hello everybody, welcome to Enlightened World Network, to Angelspeakers, interpretado en español. Bueno, el día de hoy quiero darle la bienvenida a John Masiulionis, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Le doy la
very close. Very close, Masiulionis.
Masiulionis.
There we go. Yay!
I want to welcome John to our program today. I am really excited to have him here with us. And before we open the space for him to share all the things that he's guided to share with us today, I would like to read about him. Who is John Masiulionis? Voy a leer un poco para que conozcan quién es John. For nearly a decade, John Masiulionis has been helping creatives and entrepreneurs across the country promote their talents and expand their audiences. His ability to highlight the best of what an author brings to the table is uniquely exceptional, with the power of enthusiasm and determination. John is a seasoned professional at taking ideas and turning them into realities. as a publicist for inspirational, spiritual, and children's authors, John understands the challenges that aspiring and rising authors face as they step out in faith and follow their own paths of service. He uses his networking, savvy, well-developed organizational skills, and positive energy to promote and establish name recognition for all his clients. A true partner in promotion, John empowers his clients with the personal attention and dedicated support they need to fulfill their dreams and expand the reach of their work. John currently resides in San Diego, California, where he is beginning his next steps for the children. His long-term plans include writing his own children's books and opening a children's hospice for terminally ill children in La Jolla, California. I am going to say this briefly in Spanish. John es una persona que ha estado trabajando por cerca de 10 años, ayudando a emprendedores y a gente creativa alrededor del país para promover sus talentos y para expandir sus audiencias. John es un publicista para autores inspiracionales, espirituales y para autores de niños. Él comprende los retos que conlleva todo esto y ayuda a sus clientes, los empodera y los ayuda con atención personal y apoyo dedicado para que puedan lograr sus sueños y expandir la audiencia con la que trabajan. John ahorita vive en San Diego, California, donde está comenzando sus siguientes pasos con los niños. A largo plazo, él piensa escribir sus propios libros y abrir un lugar especial para niños con enfermedades terminales, un hospicio en La Jolla, California. Ay. John, muchas gracias por estar aquí. Welcome, John. Thank you for being here. I'm really happy to have you here finally.
Hey.
I know you have been busy, and so I really appreciate your time for being here with us today. And I cannot wait to hear all the things that you are going to share with us. I want to also say to the audience, Happy Mother's Day, and to the mothers who speak Spanish, Feliz Día de las Madres, que pasen un hermoso día y un hermoso fin de semana. And in Mexico, we celebrate Mother's Day tomorrow, May 10. And in the US, it's going to be this weekend. So happy Mother's Day to all the moms in the world. And I would like to open the space for you, John, to share with us anything that you are guided to share with us today.
Well, first off, Lily, thank you for your time, for the option to come aboard your beautiful program. And before we begin, I want to take the time to recognize you, because you are providing such a wonderful platform to not only share your light balance to the world, but you're also helping many people, many empaths and sensitives and entrepreneurs, human beings you're helping people in a really, really, really empowering way. And one of the things that I take the time every day now, even more so, is to express gratitude for everyone and for everything and for the joy of this present moment. Because, you know, we all have the to-do lists, right? Like, I've got to do this, 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 and this. I got to do the grocery shopping. I got to do this and this. And then sometimes we're worried about what's going to happen into the future. And I think it's just so important when we're really in each moment and in the gratitude, and we're appreciating everyone and everything. So I know we'll be sharing a lot about, you know, the work that I do for the children and some other things, but right off the bat, I want to recognize you for who you are, for your value, and for your gifts and what you're sharing with the world.
I was saying thank you, and since you are mentioning the work that I do, I just want to mention Terry Angel, who started this program, and she's the Angelspeakers, the person who is doing Angelspeakers. Right now, she's in across the country doing land blessings, and she's able to join us sometimes, other times she's not able to, but yeah, Enlightened World Network and Terry Angel, I am grateful for them to have this platform so I can do the work that I'm doing. And thank you for your words, John. I appreciate them. Thank you.
You're most certainly welcome. You're most certainly welcome. And I also want to add one other thing about how, since it is Mother's Day, and there are many mothers out there. There are many grandmothers. There are godmothers. There are a mother in your own light. There's also moms-to-be, moms who are about ready to bring in a little one into the world. And then there are those that have a dream, a desire, and a goal, and a vision in their mind and in their heart to be a mother. It's important that I express my gratitude to all of you, because you are a beautiful part of the divine feminine. And you've definitely been helping us masculine over the course of these past couple of years, open our hearts more. And I want to thank all of you. I want to recognize my mother. I would like to recognize both of my grandmothers. I have a very special connection with my late grandmother, Jane Sajecki. Being part Polish, we would call our grandmothers babcia and our grandfathers jaja. So grandmother and grandfather. And where my journey really where my awakening became even more potent, I guess is the word to use, is when my grandmother passed away in August of 2013. August 13th of 2013, I had a very close relationship with her. You know, being part Polish, you know, the holidays were very big, especially Christmas. I remember every Christmas Eve, we would go to my grandmother's house and we would have what's known as the Wigilia, which is the Polish meatless meal. So we would have, you know, haddock fish. We'd have 3 different kinds of soups. We would have the beautiful food that's known as, some people call them, it's the Polish enunciation. So there's different kinds of pierogies. There's the potato, there's the cheese, there's the sauerkraut. And I remember my grandmother, she always had her door open, not, you know, literally and figuratively, so to speak, but anytime that I wanted to stop by, she was always there, and she would always, you know, hey, are you hungry? Would you like a bite to eat? And I remember even the last time that I had seen my grandmother before she became sick, because my family had a little bit of, there was a little bit of an estrangement, so to speak, within my family. I remember I hadn't seen my grandmother for a couple of years, and she knew who I was. And I remember knocking on the door, And I was needing to use her garage so that I could clean my car, so that I could basically do a deep cleaning of my car. And it was just the same thing, like, are you hungry? Would you like a bite to eat? Yes, you can use my garage. And, you know, on the surface, Lily, it may have looked like that the passing of my grandmother at the time was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life, or was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, but it actually became to be one of the most beautiful, heart-opening experiences of my life, because I became to have, I had a closer relationship with my grandmother in the non-physical than she was here walking on the earthly plane. So I'll share with you a beautiful story, if I may. So I remember when my grandmother passed away, my mother, my sister, and myself, we went to a beautiful floral shop in Buffalo, which is where I used to reside before I moved over to San Diego. And I found this beautiful crystal cross at the floral shop. And I didn't necessarily know why I felt this strong pull to it. It was just so beautiful, so exquisite, you know, but of course we were just there for the flowers. So we purchased the flowers, and I was heading back to the funeral home for the second part of the wake. So of course, when many people know, when someone transitions, if you do the traditional funeral kind of thing, you've got, you know, a wake where you can, you know, visit the deceased and the family all congregate together, family and friends and loved ones, you know, once or twice. And then there's the funeral services, which is like, you know, the next day, later that day, whatever the case might be. So I get a phone call from my father going to the second half of the wake. And I remember him saying, your office, John, bought a beautiful flower arrangement for Babcha. And I thought that was very nice. Before I became a publicist, before I started doing publicity work for children's authors and inspirational and spiritual authors, I used to work in the collections industry. So I would be one of the kinds of guys, if someone would owe a past due bill, I'd be the kind of person that would call you, but I would try to be nice. I wouldn't say, you know, you must pay your bill or else kind of thing. So it was so thoughtful of them to be able to do that for Babcha. So this amazing experience, Lily. So I walk into the funeral home and I see the flower arrangement. And in the center of that flower arrangement was that same crystal cross, the one that I saw at the flower shop. Nobody knew. And that was I still go back to that experience. It's literally almost 8 years ago. And I still have that crystal cross. I kept it. And it's interesting because a few years ago, when I was going to visit my father, who was in intensive care at the time at a hospital, I believe he had some bleeding from his stomach, if I'm not mistaken, or bleeding ulcer. I was bringing the cross with me, and I was going, you know, I had moved through some challenging times over the past several years. So my old residence in Buffalo, when I lived in my apartment, I would have to walk up a series of about 20 steps to get to my apartment door. So when I was leaving to go to the hospital, the crystal cross actually fell down the steps, 20 steps, like you would think it would have shattered into a million pieces. It didn't. Now, there were parts that were chipped a little bit. You know, the one part, like, you know, the one side of the cross is a little bit longer than the other. But it was my grandmother's way of saying, John, accept yourself even for your perceived imperfections. Accept yourself for who you are, for how far that you've come, that you're perfect, yet you're imperfectly perfect, I think is how the expression goes, right? And I think one of the messages that I want to share, you know, for mothers, for grandmothers, for mothers to be, for all of us, you know, for all the dads out there even, you know, too, especially for all the children. It's very easy to be hard on ourselves. It's very easy to say, I'm not where I want to be, quote unquote, I'm not where I want to be. And I feel it's important to just embrace all parts of yourself. If you're going through a wonderful season of your life, embrace it. if you're going through a challenging time, I know this may sound like a cliche expression, Lily, whether you're religious or spiritual, you'll hear the phrase, this too shall pass. And it always does. And I had many opportunities on my path to give up and to throw in the towel. There was a time 5 years ago where I had an eviction notice in my hand. 6 years ago, I was given a diagnosis of testicular cancer. And there were different other circumstances along the way where I could have just given up and said, okay, angels, I want to go home. I'll come back next lifetime and do this. And I didn't. And if I may share one other thing before we continue the flow, because I always believe that communication is a two-way street. When you have a conversation, it's about two people. Otherwise, it's just a monologue or a soliloquy. So I'd love to be able to hear what you have to say as well, too. So I am so glad that I did not give up. I'm so glad that I didn't throw in the towel, because I always believe, and this is another message that I want to share with your listeners and viewers, is that the best memories and moments of our lives have not even happened yet. And just to breathe that in and just to close your eyes and just have the trust and the faith that literally the most magical moments, the most blessed experiences, some of the most treasured memories that you'll have in your entire life have not even happened yet. So I know after Mother's Day, Lily, we have Father's Day, which is a celebration of all the wonderful dads and grandfathers and fathers to be. Back about 8 years ago, I began having communication with my son. Now I'm a single fella. I don't have a wife, fiance, girlfriend. It's just me for now, right? I began having communications with my son. Now, some people, would tell me if I would mention this, and then they would say, so your son's dead? And I have to kind of explain to them, it's like, no, he hasn't been born yet, but I've been communicating with him. And, I needed some time to get things in order, kind of let him know, hey, I'm kind of, getting my ducks in a row kind of thing. And I knew that if I did give up, that I would be cheating myself out of the experience of being a father. And that is one of the biggest blessings that any man who walks the face of this earth can have, is to bring another child into the world and to be able to create and tap into one of the greatest feelings of unconditional love that there is. So, between my grandmother, between my son, between, my spiritual team, I'm just so blessed. I really am.
Yes, you are. And actually, I was before the program, I was thinking, what would be something good to ask John? And then the first thing that came to my mind was for those people who are in our audience that don't know who you are and where you are coming from and all of that. I guess the first thing that came to my mind is just to ask you, who has inspired you? Who has been the inspiration for you to do what you are doing? And I know it might be, you might have, different people, but that's what I felt to ask you, like, who has inspired you?
Beautiful
besides
question.
Besides your grandmother.
Yeah, I would say, Babci's at the top of the list, needless to say. There's actually three people that come to mind, if I may share. Two of them, I think many of your listeners and viewers are probably very familiar with. One is Dr. Wayne Dyer, the beloved spiritual teacher and author. I believe he's been either referred to as the father of motivation or the godfather of motivation. Shortly after my grandmother transition, is a little bit after that is when Dr. Dyer made his transition. And I remember when I was introduced to his work, my favorite book of Dr. Wayne Dyer is Wishes Fulfilled. He had a wonderful PBS special of the same name. And, there was a time in my life where I wondered, is it possible for my heart's desires to come true? And what Dr. Wayne Dyer had wanted us to remember is to begin to lead and live our lives as what we are wanting to create, to believe that it's already here. In essence, that it's already a done deal. It's already happened. In some capacity, it's already happened. And to embody the energy of it. And eventually you will get to that point where it will become your full earthly experience. So for example, let's say for all the startup entrepreneurs, heart-centered entrepreneurs that are tuning into your program today, and let's say they just started a business, and let's say that they only have 1 or 2 clients, right? It's very easy to say that, well, you know, you're failing or your business is just a startup. You can make a lot of different, you know, judgments about things. But what if you connect to the belief and the energy that you are a successful businessman or businesswoman, to not let the number of clients that you have determine that, right? There's a lot of us that think that it's all about the number of zeros in our bank account, right? Like if we have millions of dollars, that we're, you know, somehow more important or more special than someone else, right? And there are a lot of people that walk this earthly plane, Lily, that are richer than those who are billionaires. And they may not necessarily have they may not have the dollars to prove it or to verify it, but they're in a greater state of happiness and joy. And you know, when you do connect with that space of happiness and joy, you're able to bring more of what it is that you want in your life, what your heart is desiring, and you're able to bring more resources, including those financial resources, so to speak. So Dr. Wayne Dyer, like to believe, and I know that just taking an eyelash from my eye, bear with me. You obviously talk about angels on your program. And I believe this is a term that Doreen Virtue had coined before her Jesus experience. She used the term earth angels. And I really believe that there are people that come into our lives, that come into our hearts, that are here to help us. And it's interesting because someone whose work that I began learning about several years ago was the beloved spiritual teacher Ram Dass. And he said a quote that I really understood. It took me a while to understand, but I got it sooner versus later. And he said, "We're all just here to walk each other home." And that totally made sense. So that I share that because of the connection that we have with our angels. Our angels, yes, they're also with us on the other side. But let's say there's times you're going through a bad day. You get a phone call from a friend and they're like, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. How are you today?" Or let's say you get an unexpected blessing. Maybe, you're going through a financial challenge. And, let's say you're asking God to send you a certain amount of resources for something that's needed. It could be maybe, a mortgage payment. It could be for groceries. It could just be, maybe you want to take a certain class. Maybe you want to hire a coach and you need a certain amount of money to do it. And you just somehow get that unexpected financial blessing, that check in the mail or that phone call and say, "Hey, I want to work with you," right? Angels come in different forms and disguises. So it's always important to be open to that. So Dr. Wayne Dyer's one. Someone who has very much inspired my journey is the beloved host of the popular children's television program, Mr. Rogers, from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I get chills talking about this because I remember growing up, I was more of a Sesame Street fan than Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So Big Bird and Grover and Cookie Monster, right? I remember watching Mr. Rogers, but I didn't really I didn't have any, vivid memories of watching it when I was little. I do remember watching it, but I don't remember hey, when I was 7, I remember this episode. So around the time, I think it was around 2015, 2016, 2017, something like that. It was probably closer to 2017. I had asked God, I said, "God, I am asking to step into the greatest level of integrity and alignment, maybe not only even in this life, but throughout the evolution of my soul. I'm choosing to be in the strongest alignment and the strongest integrity. Please send me a gentle, masculine, compassionate role model to help me embody this. That was my prayer to God. That was my prayer to my grandmother. And lo and behold, ask and ye shall receive. The universe brings me Mr. Rogers. Now, around that point in time, there was a well-known documentary that came out. I encourage all of your listeners and viewers, if you're fans of Mr. Rogers, it's called Won't You Be My Neighbor? And so there were different cast members from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood that were interviewed. There was Mr. Rogers' now late wife, Joanne. She was interviewed, and it talked about Fred's life. And it was so beautiful. So shortly after that, Mr. Rogers, of course, is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where he filmed his show. That's where he still lived until he passed in 2003. So I remember taking a visit to the Fred Rogers Center in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. So when you go there, you can see the puppets, the red sweater that he wore. And if you're doing something for research purposes, you can actually go into the bowels of the Fred Rogers Center and you can ask, what is it that you would like to have pulled? Because they have transcripts, archives on everything Mr. Rogers did. So talks at libraries, commencement speeches. So you can say, I want you to print out Mr. Rogers' thoughts on death, grief, and loss. And they'll print out a whole stack of information. And this is, of course, when I began, it became increasingly clear back around 2015 that my work was meant to be done for the children. So I was, wanting to know a little bit more about Mr. Rogers' life. So I spent time at the Fred Rogers Center doing a lot of research. And then it's so fascinating because that was also around the time where the Tom Hanks movie, where he depicted Mr. Rogers, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, came out. I remember seeing the film around like 7 or 8 times in 7 or 8 different movie theaters. I had the blessing of going to the Toronto International Film Festival a few years ago to see the world premiere. And it's so interesting, Lily, because I'm not sure if you remember Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but one of the beloved cast members of the show that was on every episode was a gentleman by the name of David Newell. And he played Mr. McFeely, who's the mailman on the program. And he would be the guy that would say, speedy delivery. So David and I have been friends now. We actually, so here's this, one of my sources of inspiration and one of his best friends for his entire life, I'm honored to call a friend. And in fact, David and I, one of the things that I do through Empowered Publicity, we have a wonderful thing called the Neighborly Reviews, where David and I take the time to review 3 brand new heartfelt children's books every month. And we actually donate a portion of the proceeds of each episode of each Neighborly Reviews bookcast to Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. Now, for your listeners and viewers, Reading is Fundamental is the largest national non-for-profit children's literacy organization in the United States. They provide children's books, developmental resources, and literacy tools for children that come from low-income families. So just, Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh last year, they provided over 80,000 children's books to over 23,000 children in need. So it's just so fascinating on how, here I was growing up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I asked for a gentle, compassionate, masculine role model who embodied love, integrity, and alignment to come into my life. This moves through me. And then all of a sudden, I'm blessed to have a friendship with someone from the program, and we're able to give back to the less fortunate children in Pittsburgh. So Mr. Rogers is the second one. And the third one is someone that probably none of your listeners and viewers have heard of. And his name is Dennis DiPaolo. Dennis DiPaolo is the owner of an Italian restaurant, a well-known Italian restaurant in Buffalo. It's one of the largest in the country, called Elio DiPaolo's. Dennis's father, Elio, was a famous professional wrestler, both here in the United States and overseas. He was born in Italy, and he was beloved around the world. He had very big hands. As a professional wrestler, he had very, very big hands. So Elio settled down in Buffalo many years ago, and he opened up what was then a pizza shop. because he wanted no one to go hungry. So he thought if he opened up a pizza shop, no one will go hungry. So he was very community oriented. So very early on, Elio gave back to different sorts of charities in the Buffalo area, including children's charities. So Elio was so loved in Buffalo, as well as across the country and around the world. Tragically, Elio was killed a little over 25 years ago, crossing the street from his restaurant, just walking across the street, and car comes out of nowhere, and he was unfortunately killed. So his father, Dennis, or his son, Dennis, and his son, Michael, took over the restaurant. So I also had the blessing, before I have begun to do, publicity work with Empowered Publicity, I hosted a popular wrestling radio show called Monday Night Mayhem. Different chapter of my life. So I interviewed a lot of my childhood heroes. So, when people think of professional wrestling, they think of the WWE, a lot of the big 300-pound guys wearing the muscle shirts and the big gold belts, right? So that I really had a near 25-year love affair with the world of the WWE and sports entertainment and professional wrestling. I traveled across the country, went to 5 different WrestleManias. That's the flagship big event of the year if you're a wrestling fan. But it's interesting because one of the things that the most treasured experience that I took from that wrestling radio show was meeting Dennis DiPaolo, because I wanted to take the time to honor his father. His father also had a really well-known friend, a great professional wrestler by the name of Dick the Destroyer Beyer. The two of them were inseparable, especially after they retired. So in 2003, I was introduced to Dennis, and he really became a father figure to me. He introduced me to the folks at Children's Hospital in Buffalo. So whenever the wrestlers would come through Buffalo, I would be one of the ones that would help to facilitate visits for the wrestlers to meet the kids. So each children's hospital, Lily, has what's known as a child life department. They provide emotional support and entertainment for children who are going through cancer, dialysis, and recovering from surgeries. So they'll provide resources for children like coloring books, children's books, televisions, video game systems, or they'll actually bring in celebrities, well-known people to visit the kids to lift their spirits and open their hearts. So I remember there were many times whenever the wrestling companies would come through Buffalo, these wonderful experiences we would have. Dennis and I, along with the help of others, we helped to raise money, thousands of dollars, for Children's Hospital in Buffalo and various children's charities in Buffalo. And I had a stronger relationship with Dennis. I still speak with him, even though we're on separate coasts. Love knows no time and space. I actually spoke with Dennis just a few days ago. And if it was not for him, I may not be here, because there were times in my life where I was going through a lot. I remember going back to the time where, I had an eviction notice in my hand. I remember in my pantry, I had like a 5-pound bag of pasta and like a whole case of Elio DiPaolo's marinara sauce. And Dennis literally did not have me go hungry. There were times when, I was going through, financial issues, and Dennis said, hey, would you like to help out and do some things at the restaurant? And this is where I really needed to learn and remember the value of service, because Dennis helped me to remember that it's about the we. It's not about the me. It's about what can I do for others? How may I serve you? What's in it for, we have this mentality, this collective mentality of what's in it for me before how may I be of service? Because a lot of us, we've got lack, scarcity. We kind of went through a whole bunch of stuff for a long period of time, right? And when you realize that everything that you need to fulfill what it is you came here to do is always provided for, you can let go of that lack and scarcity, right? Dennis is such a beautiful man. He's such a kind heart. And if anyone's getting hungry right now, hearing about Italian food, by the way, if you actually go to eliodipalos.com, and I'll actually, once our interview is uploaded, I'll actually share the website in the description of the interview, the little comments. It's literally the best Italian food on planet Earth, so to speak. Yeah, those still are my sources of inspiration, Lily.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. I was aware of Dr. Wayne Dyer, that you follow his work, and Mr. Rogers. I was not aware of Dennis DePaul. That's the one that I didn't know about. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for allowing Dennis to be here in spirit. I feel his spirit is very much with us.
Yes, yes, I'm sure he is here with us. Yes. Then I could, I know I have followed Dr. Wayne Dyer work for a while, and now Serena and Sage, they are going to, as we know, they are going to publish, they are going to release their book on Mother's Day. I believe it's May 11. Is that Mother's Day?
I know the release is in the coming days. Yeah.
Yes, but it's coming up. So yeah. Yeah. So in the something that I wanted. I mean, you mentioned that the importance of trusting yourself, enjoying the flow of life, and embracing your gifts. What can you share with us about that?
I think all three are very important, especially with where we're at today and where we are moving forward from here. Trusting yourself is paramount. A lot of us, we can have trust issues. Let's say you're just entering into a new relationship with a new girlfriend. And let's say that your experiences in romantic relationships were not the best, right? It's very easy to say and go back to that old wound and say, will she hurt me? If, let's say, you had a series of experiences in life where just in general things didn't turn out very well, you always kind of had that old belief, the old shoe syndrome, as I like to call it. The other shoe's eventually going to drop, right? And trust is the foundation of everything. When you're building a house, before you build the second floor, right? You have to lay the foundation of anything. And that life is merely an external representation of what you feel about yourself on the inside. So if you believe in your heart that you can trust yourself, and even if you're learning to trust yourself more, I mean, we're always still learning, right? When you're trusting yourself, you're going to be attracting experiences and relationships into your life that will verify that for you. Simultaneously, if you're having a challenge, trouble, if you feel you can't trust yourself, you might be wondering, you'll have relationships where they may not be able to trust you. And trust is something that I feel that when many of us are starting to open up our hearts, when there's been a lot of heart work that's been happening individually and collectively, right? Even if this is maybe a little suggestion, a little piece of a little tool, I guess, that I can mention for those who maybe feel challenged about trusting in relationships, but still want to move forward, right? To lean in. You and I were talking in your green room before we started the interview about being with the flow, being in the flow, being in the moment, right? So let's say that you're taking the time to get to know someone a little bit better, right? You enjoy that conversation, right? Maybe that conversation will turn into a phone call. And then maybe that phone conversation will turn into a Zoom chat. And then maybe that Zoom chat will turn into a dinner. And then maybe it'll turn into a beautiful relationship thereafter, right? But it's just so important right now to trust yourself and also to trust your decisions that you're making. It's very easy to be indecisive, to kind of be on the fence, right? As the expression goes, to be on the fence, right? And I feel this is where it's important to trust your guidance, right? Our guides and our angels are always with us. It's whether or not we're listening or not, right? And we can make decisions more efficiently now because we're able to process and integrate things that much more efficiently than we did before. So not just trust yourself, but trust your decisions that you're making right now. Because there's a lot of beautiful and amazing things that are happening right now. There's a lot of miracles that are happening right now too. But again, trust, it's really one of the paramount features, so to speak. I really do believe that. And then when you have more trust, you have more love. There's so many other things that will happen for your life as the result of trusting yourself more, which I think is absolutely beautiful. I feel that embracing your spiritual gifts, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to mention you, Lily, and to recognize you at the beginning of our time together today, because every one of us has, and I think Dr. Wayne Dyer refers to it as this. I think Bruce Lipton also refers to it as this in a certain fashion. We all have a soul signature. Whenever we sign our name, right? Let's say we go to the bank and we're signing our name on a check, right? We all literally have different signatures, but they're all unique. And we all have these things that are meant to be shared right now. So I'm going to share with you something, if I may, Lily. So several years ago in Buffalo, I purchased this essential oil diffuser necklace. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this here. You're probably seeing my big head as I'm leaning in on my screen. But this has musical notes on it, right? This has musical notes on it. And there's a reason why I purchased this, because one of Dr. Wayne Dyer's books, co-authored by his daughter, Serena, is Don't Die with Your Music Still in You. So this is my reminder every day. I put on this necklace and it's literally like laying right on top of my heart chakra, interestingly enough. And it is a reminder for me to keep playing my music. So as you're taking the time to do more of your healing, and healing can be different forms or fashions, right? You can go to, a practitioner, you can go to a Reiki master, you can go to an energy healer, you can go to a shaman. There's different experiences to bring in healing, right? And to open up more of your gifts, because as you clear the old guilt, judgment, blame, shame, unworthiness, the rejections, the old paradigms, the storylines, the old patterns, all of that, you have a greater connection with spirit. Your gifts start to just come up out of nowhere. And it's interesting because I'm excited about this, and I'm talking about this more now. Later on this year, I'm starting to write my first children's book. And this is something that I've wanted to do for about probably close to 5 years. And there was a part of me that said, how is it going to happen? How's it going to fund itself? Because, when you put together a good children's book, if you really want to invest in good illustrations, you'll be spending several $1,000s, probably more than that. So, I was asking myself, how the heck is this going to happen? Right. And now it's a matter of like, okay, I've been blessed to do this publicity work for 7 years. I know how to promote books. There's a wonderful, I don't really use the term network of people. It's a very earthly kind of term. There's so many blessed, there are so many angels that are in my life. We'll even call it that. So many angels that are amazing children's authors that I know will be there to support me in my work. So it's important to remind all of your listeners and viewers that to not die with your music still in you, that you have those gifts. They are meant to be shared. Your story is meant to be shared. A lot of people began writing books during COVID, Lily, because it's really like a lot of people were reading more. So there's a lot of inspirational books coming out, a lot of spiritual books coming out, a lot of children's books that are coming out, all as the result of COVID, right? So if you have a book in you, there is someone that can benefit from your knowledge, your skills, your gifts, your love, your compassion, from your experience. Because I believe one of the most important things about our healing is that when we share our experience of what we went through previously, we can help someone who is going through that same experience. So for example, if let's say there is someone who is experiencing homelessness right now, and let's say you went through that experience beforehand, you can empathize, you can relate, you can provide some help and assistance and support however you're guided to, so that maybe that person doesn't have to prolong that experience, if that makes sense. And then lastly, going with the flow and enjoying life. I had so many people, Lily, over my entire 39 years on this earthly plane say, John, why don't you relax? And I even laughed talking about this. It seems like the easiest things are what we have the most difficulty with, like love yourself, let go, relax, have fun, right? You know, we all have these earthly duties. We have to pay taxes, pay bills, go to the grocery store, walk the dog, take the kids to the park, pick up the kids from school, right? And how often do we just enjoy life? Right? To give yourself the time to do the things that really bring love and joy into your life. Like I know for me, Lily, I'm a child of the 80s. I love records. I have this beautiful record player that I bought a little under a year ago, and I take the time to listen to records. It really soothes my soul. Whenever I want to, reconnect with my inner child, I will read a children's book. I have a beautiful library of children's books on my end of things. Children's books really help me to reconnect with my inner child and really helped in my own healing. Those are some of the things, one of my favorite places in La Jolla, which is where I envision the children's hospice opening up in the foreseeable future, is a place called Children's Pool Beach. And it's an area right on La Jolla Cove, where literally it's where the La Jolla Cove connects with the Pacific Ocean. And it's where a lot of the sea otters and sea lions and their families populate on the sand. It's this beautiful thing. And I'll actually be going there tonight, in fact. It's just 25 minutes from where I live here in the San Diego area. And it's beautiful. So to do the things that bring you joy, because it's very easy to say, I'm struggling. I feel like I've got trapped energy. I'm going through a difficult time, and we can just be all up in our head. And if I could add a fourth thing, be in your heart. Be in your heart, because that's where the magic happens. I mean, yes, we had, we were, one of my favorite movies that I actually just saw again, because it just celebrated its 20th anniversary a few weeks ago, was the movie, the animated classic Shrek, with Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy and Cameron Diaz. And Eddie Murphy, or I should say Mike Myers' character, Shrek, says, donkey, ogres are like onions. Onions have layers, ogres have layers, right? And that's kind of with our heart, right? Because sometimes, we've been hurt, so we have the shield up, the shield of armor. I've been hurt, don't hurt me, right? But this goes back to what I mentioned before about leaning in, open your heart. And I'll begin to conclude by saying this, because I know that we're beginning to wind down our time, Lily, is that, Dr. Wayne Dyer would say, whenever he did one of his talks, he would say, if you resonated with 30% of what I shared today and the rest goes out the other ear, that's fine. If you only got 10% of what I said and the rest goes out the other ear, that's great. So I hope that what I have shared today in some form or fashion, it helps you, It brings love and joy if it already has, and if it's continuing to do so, bring more love and joy into your heart. Because at the end of the day, things are starting to get really good if you allow themselves to be. The best memories and moments of our life, again, have not even happened yet, as I had mentioned beforehand. And to give yourself credit, if there's one last thing that I can add, Lily, it's to remember how far that you've come. You know, no matter where you are living in the world, no matter where you're at on your path, you would just take the time to say, wow, I'm still here. I'm still doing it. I haven't given up. I've went through a lot, yeah, but you know what? I'm still here. I still have a calling. I still have a purpose. I still have my music to play.
Yes. And yes, we do. We do still have a lot of music to play. I remember that. I read that book of Dr. Wayne Dyer and Serena. John, something that I would like to let the audience know. I just mentioned some of the things that you are doing. I mean, I say some because there are so many things that you are doing, but I found in your website, it says customized book, media tours, media coaching and mentoring program, empowering read for kids, children's books spotlight series, neighborly reviews, podcasts, story time with Mr. John, PR roadmap consultations, and then interviews that are radio and podcast interviews and client TV interviews. And then you also have something giving back to the children. So that's a lot of things that you are doing. And something that comes to my mind to ask you, I don't want to let that go. I know you are very passionate about working with kids and helping children. That's very strong in you. And so you are planning to do a hospice in La Jolla in the upcoming future. Now, the reason that you moved from Buffalo, you were born in Buffalo, New York, were you? You were
Yes.
born there, and you lived many years.
I'm turning 40, even though I don't feel 40. A lot of youthful energy, a young heart, but an old soul. Was born August 18th, 1981. So yeah, I spent my entire life in Buffalo up until October of last year. And I've been out here in San Diego for 7 months now.
That is a big change. So what inspired you to move, to make such a big change? I am curious about that.
This area, I was first introduced to San Diego in 2005. I was here for the first time. It was a wonderful experience for a few days. I literally remember at the time, it was one of the greatest nights of sleep I had in my entire life. And my soul felt at peace for the first time. When this was back in 2005 kind of thing. I felt I had unfinished business out here, whatever that meant. I didn't necessarily, wanted to analyze it, but I knew there was unfinished business. And again, after my grandmother passed away, it became increasingly clear I was meant to be out here in California. Now, at first, I didn't necessarily know if it was San Diego. I had, a little bit of an intuitive hit, is it possibly Los Angeles? But 2 years ago, I visited in crystal clear in the summer of 2019 that I was meant to be out here in San Diego. And it's, sometimes people told me last year, like, John, there's a global pandemic happening and you're moving across the country. And I said, you know what? This is all connected with my life's purpose. this will totally work itself out. So again, sometimes people move and there's someone that's with them, mom, dad, brother, sister, girlfriend, fiance, boyfriend, dog, cat. It was just me. So it was myself. It was my car. I got a little U-Haul. I brought my stuff with me out here. It took about 5 days to drive across the country. And I trusted the flow. I trusted that the timing was right, and it has been, and it very much still is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I feel literally, Lily, I have felt more at peace. I felt more at home in 7 months in San Diego than 38 years in Buffalo. Buffalo's great. It served its purpose. But my soul was meant to expand. As Dr. Wayne Dyer says, our soul doesn't want to be confined. Our soul doesn't want to be boxed into a corner, just boxed in. It wants to expand and grow. And that wasn't going to happen in Buffalo, Lily. San Diego's just completely different, and different meaning good.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I grew up going to San Diego very often. I used to live in Southern California, in San Diego, before I moved to where I live now in Northern California. So I know, and I did my teacher training in La Jolla. So I am familiar with that area. It is beautiful. And I really look forward to that project with hospice. I'm sure it's going to be a big project that is going to bring a lot of service and love and light and support to so many children and their families.
I believe that too. And I trust the fact, and I'll also mention this briefly if I may. So my first my first children's book is actually going to be bringing the children's hospice to life through the form of a children's book. That's what the first book is actually going to be. So I'm literally, the hospice in a way will already be built through the book. I'm bringing it into reality through that. And then eventually it will take form and shape in the physical building structure kind of thing.
So your book is, what is your book going to be about? I mean, I don't know if you can share, but
sure, yeah. I'll just, without giving too much away, is what the readers will be able to see is this beautiful exchange of love from several angels from different places and different walks of life. And they have a desire to help walk home the children of the world, to help children peacefully transition. Is the place for it to happen. And so this is where the hospice will be built, so to speak, through the book. And then the hospice in essence is going from my mind's eye and my heart to the book. And then it will be reflected from the book into the physical building and structure. So yeah, I'm going to begin to work on it later this year. And I'm really, I just trust the fact this is going to be divinely supported. And I really believe that. Yes,
it will. And I will be waiting to see that happening and unfolding this year. Yes, that's great. And I will be writing into the comments. I will be typing into the comments your information, all your social media. I know you are in all the social media, right? You are in Twitter, you are in Facebook, Instagram. Is that Instagram that you are?
Yes,
also?
Correct.
And then YouTube. You are. Is there anything else that I'm missing?
Nope, everything else. And it's actually very easy. So your listeners and viewers, if they're interested in learning more about empowered publicity, if someone else spiritual love and you feel that I can help and support you, if you're looking to share your message with the media, whether it be on television or through radio or through podcasts or through newspapers or magazines or through book blogs. There's so many ways to be able to share your message. If you're simply looking to connect further with the love and joy of reading, as I mentioned earlier, there's the Neighborly Reviews bookcast with myself and David Newell, who played Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. There's the Children's Book Spotlight series, which is the children's book podcast that I've been blessed to host for the past 2.5 years, celebrated its 2-year anniversary during the fall and its 100th episode during the holiday season. So some of the most popular children's authors, some of the rising stars in the kidlit community as well, they share their inspiring stories in the release of their brand new children's books. There's so much wonderful information available at my website. So yeah, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube are all at Empowered Publicity. And then Twitter is the only one that's different. It's at empowered_PR. But I appreciate your kindness in sharing the links before, just so that your listeners and viewers, they don't have to take the pen and paper and say, okay, what's John's website? What's his Facebook page? Everything will be shared in the description below. And Lily, again, you've been so supportive of this work and my mission, especially for the children. And I really appreciate that. And just one last thing, if I may mention before we wrap up, is that continue to support Lily. If you are a listener, a viewer, a fan, a follower, an admirer of Lily's work, please continue to support what she is doing, because Lily, you are a very special soul. You have a beautiful, unique soul signature yourself. And I feel that the best is yet to come for yourself. So if anything that you're doing, if anything that Lily is doing inspires you, including this episode that we've shared here today, share Lily's messages on your social media platforms. Tell a good friend, tell a neighbor, because Lily is doing some wonderful work. And it's really not necessarily about us. We're just the messengers. It's a matter of these messages needing to be shared out there. This is one of my favorite interviews that I've ever done, Lily. I want to say this as well, too, that I've done interviews for the past, I've done interviews in different forms and fashions for over 20 years. This has been one of my most favorite interviews. So thank you. This has been a lovely time here today.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate your words, John. I'm just typing here a message for some of the people in the audience. Yes, there is some Montse that wants me to share the information with her. And thank you to Susan in YouTube. She also posted a comment. Well, yeah, I want to say thank you to all the audience that joined us today live, and the ones who are going to be watching the replay. Thank you for being here and for listening to this beautiful message that John shared with us today. And for our Spanish-speaking audience who watched today, John, I guess I just want to ask if there is anybody who is interested in reaching out to you, but they speak Spanish. And I just wonder, how can they contact you if you have something in place? Or
That's actually a very good question. Well, two things actually come to mind. One is that I do my best where, sometimes I'll work with people from different countries and maybe their English isn't their first language, so to speak, right? So I do my part to listen more. So if a person doesn't necessarily speak like the traditional American, right, I do my part to listen a little bit more. And if someone only speaks Spanish, so to speak, and one of the things that I like to do is if there's something that I cannot do to help someone, I will see what I can do to be able to introduce them to someone who can. So it's interesting. I'm kind of wondering, is there any friends of mine that speak Spanish? And I believe that there is. So yes, whatever the flow may bring, because there's a lot of wonderful authors from Hispanic and Latina backgrounds that are sharing important messages right now as well too. And they deserve to be acknowledged and valued, and their messages deserve to be shared.
Yes, and in California and in San Diego, I don't know the statistics, but I know there is a high percent of Spanish-speaking.
There is, yes.
People. Yes. Lo voy a decir I'm going to say it in Spanish. John, en caso de que algún autor o alguien que quiera escribir un libro o alguien que esté interesado en el trabajo que él hace con niños, se pueden comunicar con él y él va a ver cómo les puede ayudar, ya sea que él les ayude o que él los refiera con alguien para que los pueda ayudar. Y voy a poner en los comentarios la información de John, voy a poner su sitio web, voy a poner su información en Twitter, su información en Instagram, su información en YouTube y su enlace para Facebook también, para que se puedan contactar con él. Si hablan español, se pueden contactar con él y él los puede ayudar para cualquier cosa relacionada con, como le llama él, Empower Publicity, que es publicista y ayuda a personas a que se abran y se vean en el mundo. Así que muchas gracias a todos los que se unieron el día de hoy y nos vemos la próxima semana. So again, thank you, John. Thank you for all your kind words. I really appreciate your kind heart and all what you shared with us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Lily. I appreciate you and I appreciate this very much.
Bueno, nos vemos. Hasta pronto.